Hello and welcome to From Fertility to Delivery. I have a delightful pleasure today of having Barbara Harper on the channel. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Dayna.
Yes, yes. And before we start, I just wanted to introduce Barbara to all of you. So Barbara Harper is a leading voice for childbirth and maternity care reform, an author, educator, midwife, grandmother, international recognized expert on the use of warm water immersion for labor and birth. Barbara's professional inspiration began with a close and loving relationship with her grandmother, Estella Ethel Harper Lemunion. I hope I said that right. Who was a nurse and midwife for 47 years. Barbara became a registered nurse in 1975 and has worked in obstetrics, pediatrics, cardiac, neurosurgical, intensive care, and as a holistic nursing specialist. Barbara is also a Blissborn Hypnosis for Birth educator and senior mentor. And also Barbara has 3 wonderful children and 2 beautiful grandchildren. Welcome and thank you for being here, Barbara.
You got that right. It was wonderful. Thank you, Dayna. That was a great introduction. And yes, I have surpassed my grandmother now in years working.
Amazing. I'm sure she's looking down from heaven and she's amazed at you.
This picture right here is her graduating class in 1921. And there's a long story about how I got the picture. And I ended up going to the practicum that I did for my nursing degree was done in the same hospital. And that's kind of in Lima, Ohio. And that's kind of why I found it. But they gave it to me. And those are the 12 women who I call them my A-team. They're all looking down on me and saying, get busy.
Keep going. That's a beautiful story. I love that. It's so good to have memories to look at. So we're going to have an informal chat, and I created some questions for you so that we could, do a little deep dive in everything birthing and what's happening now on the planet and where we're headed. So the first question is, what changes have you seen in the birthing, obstetrics, midwifery industry since you started as a registered nurse in 1975?
Oh my goodness, that Dayna.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest change is women's empowerment and education. The education that I became a Lamaze instructor back. Well, I took Lamaze classes in the 70s. I gave birth in 78, 84, and 86. And when I took Lamaze, they actually have this as a logo. It's not my Maz Lamaze anymore. And I've seen that switch and focused on that when I published my first book, Gentle Birth Choices. It was published as a guide to help people ask for what they wanted, and it sold hundreds of thousands of copies. And I still it was first published in 94, and then I did a revised edition in 2005. And I'm happy to report that I still receive royalties from it every 6 months. Not so much anymore, but my publisher and her Traditions, Bear and Company, promised to keep it on bookshelves in bookstores for as long as people were buying it. So the 2005 edition, okay, it's coming up on like 30 years.
Yeah.
And so the information that was in there was a direct result of the changes that we wanted. And in 1996, I was part of the Coalition for Improving Maternity Services, which was an organization that was founded by heads of organizations. We decided to come together, the nurses, the holistic physicians, not ACOG, but the American Academy of Pediatrics, but A1 for hospital nurses, all the childbirth education organizations, Bradley, Lamaze, there's some that are international as well. Dona, Kappa, everybody that had doula trainings, we all came together in a place, a retreat site in California, and we hammered out the 10 steps to create mother-friendly care in hospitals. And that has morphed into an international organization, basically called mother baby friendly care. And that's what I see as having changed so much, because parents back in the 70s were just willing to go into any hospital and say, do what you need to do to get the baby out.
Yeah.
And now with Blissborn and hypnobirthing with in Marie Mongan of blessed memory, I worked with her back in the early 2000s, and she taught classes at my center in Portland, Oregon. And I could see that just childbirth education as it wasn't enough, that we really had to empower women to own their bodies. I like to chant with my students, it's my body, it's my baby, it's my birth. And I won't tell you the rest of the song because I wrote it with A$AP Rocky on an airplane going from New Jersey to Fort Lauderdale. We had so much fun. We were seat partners in first class, and we came in, and his wife was pregnant at the time. And it was just that he started asking me questions when he found out that I was a midwife. And we were sitting there chanting, it's my body, it's my baby, it's my birth. And so we're seeing more things like shared decision making. One of my very favorite physicians is Dr. Brad Boots Taylor in Atlanta, and he even wrote a book called Shared Decision Making in Birth. And he's an OBGYN who will do VBACs, who will do breech position, who will attend vaginal twins. And so we're seeing a renaissance right now of cooperation with midwifery, and we're seeing so many more midwives for home births, lots more birth centers, and of course midwives in hospitals.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And that's a great direction that we're headed in. That's wonderful. So how would you describe the concept of Blissborn Hypnobirthing to someone that has never heard about it before? Because we may have some newbies on watching this that have never heard about it before.
Well, I like to define hypnosis, and some people are afraid of hypnosis because they think that it's like mind control, and I erase that right away. It's a natural state. One of the first things I ask couples in my classes or in my trainings to educate people to become teachers, has anybody ever read a book and cried? Every hand goes up. Has anybody ever watched a movie and laughed? Every hand goes up. And I said, well, you're having a physiological response to a thought. And they go, oh, so hypnosis is a thought with a physiologic response that you want to create and go back to it over and over and over. And so what's the response that we want to create for a woman in labor? What response do we want? We want comfort.
Yeah.
We want her to be comfortable
Mm-hmm.
in her body and with a uterus that is creating an electrical charge throughout her system every 15 minutes, then every 10 minutes, then every 5 minutes, then every 3 minutes. So she has to be comfortable. Next, she has to be has a deep sense of peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not about going, it's not about that. It's about changing your awareness, shifting your awareness. And the third thing that we want is deep, profound relaxation. So what are the first three letters of each word? Comfort, peace, and relaxation.
CPR.
So hypnosis is CPR for labor.
Wow.
And the definition of hypnosis is achieving something that you want by shifting your focus. And so in Blissborn classes, we work for 5 weeks to do the education. And then let's say there's another 4 or 5 weeks left to the pregnancy before the baby comes. There's BBC before baby comes and ABC after baby comes. Okay. Yeah. And the lessons on self-hypnosis are how to relax the body and refocus the mind by doing what we call a let go trigger. So you practice over and over and over, and you listen to audio tapes that guide you. And by the time you're finished with the classes, you're preparing now for your birth. And it's not just for birth. It prepares you for postpartum. It prepares you for breastfeeding. It prepares you for parenting. And I always ask every person, now, what kind of child would you like at 3 years old? Would you like a child that is very self-regulated, eats all their vegetables, climbs up in your lap with a book and looks at you and lovingly says, I love you, goes to bed at 7:30 p.m., wakes up at 7:30 a.m., and is a pleasure to be with? Would you like that?
Who would say no? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. No. I said, well, guess what? Today, the lesson to achieve that begins here. Because a hypnosis birth is unmedicated. A hypnosis birth is quick, usually, and much easier than one without hypnosis, one without epidural anesthesia, one without any drugs on board. So you get a full complement of all the hormones, the 33 hormones that govern and make pregnancy, birth, and all the labor and all the postpartum. You've got this intricate dance between the mother's brain that's releasing all these hormones and the baby's neurologically designed I call it an imperative, a biological imperative to be born. Baby has instructions, and all of that is on the subconscious level.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say one other fact, that the brain is not the mind.
Yeah.
And the mind is not the brain. And so so you've got this subconscious level where everything takes place. 40 million bits of information are going on in your body, your digestion, your breathing, your heart rate, and you're not controlling all of that consciously. So there's 40 bits of information per second that is in your control, and that kind of has to be unplugged and taken offline to a certain extent during a labor and birth, because we want the system, which has intentions of making birth easy and calm and peaceful and relaxed. So if we can dive into that space, it's those babies are just, they're incredible. They come out with this joy, like looking right in mother's eyes and going, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Because they didn't have to struggle.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I love how you put that. And how the mind is not the brain and the brain is not the mind. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said it before, which I have on my business cards and I think on my website as well. Birth happens between the ears, not the legs. I think it's huge.
It does indeed. And I always also say that babies don't wear watches. Time is irrelevant. Like when's the baby due? I tell people, tell all your family and your friends a month later. Don't take that where's my I usually have something right here on my desk. This is an older one that I have. It's called the gestational wheel. And we figure out, we calculate what your due date is based on your last menstrual period. And so I always say add at least 3 weeks to that. So because your window of opportunity when it's actually safe to stay home or in a birth center to have, baby doing its best is anywhere from 37 weeks to 42 weeks. And everybody takes off that those 2 other weeks. Right. And says, oh, why isn't your baby here? It's been 40 weeks already. And so that's a miscalculation. And the doctor who invented this, it was in the 1800s. And one of the things that I love to do with couples prior to labor beginning is helping them see that the baby's the driver. And so if we create that space of comfort, peace, and relaxation, it's a matter of the mother letting the baby out instead of me, the midwife or the obstetrician, getting the baby out.
Yeah, that's right.
Big difference.
Huge. That's so important. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because that's important. And, guest date versus due date versus actual birth date. So you have the guest date, which is what we should all call it, because we don't really know. The due date is only 5% accurate, and the birth date is 100% accurate.
When do babies come on their birthdays?
Exactly. Very good. Right. I love that. So my next question, let's add water, just like your website, into the mix. How does the marriage of hypnobirthing and waterbirth create a successful birth for mother and baby?
It's the best marriage possible,
Mhm.
Dana. It's laboring and giving birth in water elevates the ease.
Mhm.
Um, your brain waves actually go into a state, a theta state, when you're in water. So if you have been educated about hypnosis, especially with the Blissborn method, I've over last year there was a woman. April 27th was the day her baby came. Um, and I met her at the birth center at 4 o'clock in the morning. And she got into the tub right away because she was already a stretchy 5. It was her third baby.
Mhm.
And she stretched out in our big tubs there. And I put a rebozo around her head. And so we could just cradle her head, and she completely stretched out and was buoyant and floating in the water. She didn't move a single muscle in her body except her uterus was contracting, and you could see the baby moving down.
Mm.
You could watch it, and every once in a while she'd go like this, and I would just put a finger right here, kind of on her third eye, and just remind her, let go. That's it. Good. And I wouldn't even touch her, but I would put my hands above her heart chakra, and her sacral chakra as well. And on 3 days postpartum, I asked her, how long do you think you were in the water before the baby was born? And she looked at her husband, who knew exactly, and I knew exactly. And she goes, I really have no way of telling. But I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like 15 minutes.
Wow. Hmm.
And guess how long it actually was?
Oh, goodness. I want to say 2 hours, but I don't know. Maybe more than that. Wow.
4
4 hours.
hours.
4 hours. Wow.
4 hours.
Amazing.
She got into the water. She used her breathing, her hypnosis, her let go trigger, and the water cradled her and
Oh,
supported her. And she said she had this otherworldly experience
mhm.
of floating um, and just letting it all happen.
Yeah.
And that's you know, Dana, birthing in the water is never the goal for me.
Okay.
It's making the woman feel comfortable, at peace, and deeply relaxed. It's the same CPR. Both hypnosis and water are the perfect marriage. And if, like this woman, all of a sudden I could see the baby had moved down, and I leaned in and told her, I said, it's time to let the baby out. And I said, just put your feet in the stream and hold the baby's hand and let the baby lead the way. And with the next contraction, she went like this and immediately went to her knees, put one foot flat on the floor, one knee on the floor of the tub, and went, oh, oh, and the baby fell out.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Beautiful.
no crowning, nothing.
Mhm.
It was just, baby was ready.
Yeah.
And the water catches the baby.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, there's no physiologic possibility of any baby that's born in water to inhale to gulp the water,
Mhm.
to take water into the lungs. The lungs aren't working yet. They don't work until the fetus turns into a newborn by taking the blood that's in the placenta and sending it to the lungs, the liver, the stomach, the brain, the skin, and all. That's why we have to leave the cord intact
Mhm.
instead of cutting it. We have to have a placental transfusion. And once the lungs are perfused and oxygenated, then the fluids that are there can disappear and oxygen and carbon dioxide can exchange for the first time. And that sometimes takes about 30 to 45 seconds. And everybody goes, "Oh, what's the matter? The baby's not crying. The baby's not crying." Well, when baby comes here, because after a water birth, you just gently lift the baby up. The mother can lift the baby up. The father can lift the baby up. The midwife can lift the baby up. There's no rush.
Mhm.
And lift the baby into what I call the sanctuary. In Hebrew, it's called the mikdash. The mikdash is the holy of holies where only God dwells. And that is, we've had 9 months on the inside. Now that new human being has to spend 9 months in the sanctuary,
Mhm.
in communicating with mother's brain,
Mhm.
and what I call signaling the Wi-Fi connection. Mother has the router, baby picks it up with the Wi-Fi. Baby has a router, mother picks it up with the Wi-Fi. So water facilitates that as well. And it just makes it so much easier. I was the 6th person in the US to have a documented water birth in 1984. And so
Wow.
next year, my son Sam is going to be 40,
Oh,
and water birth is now a common
yeah.
term.
Wow. Beautiful.
In some hospitals in the UK, every hospital has a tub.
Such a blessing.
Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland. And I've worked with hospitals all over the world in 75 countries. 76, number 76 is going to be the Philippines, and that's coming up at the end of October. I'm going to go and sit in the birth room and supervise water births for a couple of weeks.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. Yeah, the Philippines, they'll definitely take to it. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So, what would you say to a woman and her partner who are very fearful of natural childbirth and water birth? How do we work around that?
Um, in our first class with Blissborn, we ask the couples, what's your, when I say you're going to have a baby, you're going to give birth, what's your first impression? What comes up? And if your classes are like mine, every single person says, I'm afraid of the pain.
Mm.
And so, and especially if it's a first baby,
Mhm.
but sometimes second baby, there was a woman that came to me for her 5th baby. She'd had 4 hospital births,
Mhm.
and she came to my office and we talked about it, and I became her midwife. My partner and I did her birth together for number 5, and she had a beautiful experience. We set up the tub, and she just breathed right through those contractions, and she and her husband lifted up the baby herself. Well, she called me next year, exactly 1 year, and said that she was pregnant with number 6 and she wants another water birth. And then the next year, pregnant with number 7, she wants a water birth. By the time she was pregnant with that baby, number 7, I told her, I said, you know what? You should just buy a tub and have it here And
Yeah.
so I don't have to bring it over for you. And she went on to have number 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all water births. And after number 10, her husband looked at me at a postpartum visit, and he said, how can we prevent another pregnancy? And like, if you don't know now, nothing can save you. I think she did. I moved away from the area when I came to Florida 15 years ago. And she had number 13 all by herself.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But she had her oldest child. I remember the girls, each child was assigned a younger child.
Yeah.
They homeschooled, they had a home church. It was just one of the happiest families that I've ever had the privilege to be with. And it was amazing. She breastfed every single one of them. Wow. So the original question is, why are couples so, like, why do 73% of all couples walk into a hospital and ask for an epidural? Yeah. Because society has done that. Society has created this fear of childbirth. We locked it away into the hospital. Only obstetricians could do it. And now we have 37 accredited schools of midwifery in universities in the US. And the very first one was Columbia University in New York City, that was offering nursing and midwifery at the same time. But on top of that, we also have many accredited programs for to create out-of-hospital birth midwives, the certified professional midwives as well. And so there's much more awareness that this beginning of this new human being, I don't even call them a baby, were spiritual beings seeking a physical experience. Why do we come to this plane called Earth? So that we can feel and we can have sensations. And modern medicine wants us not to feel. You have a headache, you take an aspirin or a Tylenol or an ibuprofen. You have menstrual cramps, you take Midol. You go into labor, you have an epidural to make it easier, so that you can't feel anything from your tits to your toes.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And yeah, you can watch the football game. Everybody in your hospital room can watch the football game while you're laboring. And nobody tells the mother or the father that the drugs that are given for pain management actually will affect the baby and your ability to breastfeed better. All of those things that we see as complications of postpartum, including postpartum depression, can be very much tied to having been robbed of this normal biological experience of feeling a baby coming through you. And that's why I help practitioners, I help doctors and midwives all over the world see that their job is holding that space and to always believe in the direction of normalcy. Not every birth is normal. Not every baby survives. And that's another thing that they don't teach in nursing school or medical school, that death and or what you and I would probably call transformation through leaving the body is just as normal as entering a body. And sometimes those little ones aren't here for very long. And even though that's difficult for all of us to process, we have to talk about it. We have to address it as well. And then the fear dissipates. Why is there so much fear? Yes, the pain. Yes, a lot of women are afraid that they are not going to be the same after birth. Well, guess what? You're not. You are transformed into from maidenhood to motherhood. And some women are afraid of menopause because they'll be transformed from motherhood to being a crone after they stop bleeding. And I have everybody repeat after me. What my mind thinks, my body feels. And when I'm teaching a big seminar for doctors and midwives, I actually set up an experiment with like either 12, 14, sometimes 20 volunteers. And I divide them equally into pairs. They pick a partner, and the first group, I take their pretend practitioners, birth providers, midwives, doctors, and I take them over into the corner and I say, I want you to focus on one thought and one thought only. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else, and I don't like you. And then I bring them back, and I set a timer for 3 minutes. And so the pretend practitioners are doing like this. No eye contact, no touching, nothing. And you can see on the faces of the pretend pregnant women that they're like, what the heck is going on? And they try to get the attention of the provider. And I had told everybody no touching, and the timer goes off after 3 minutes. And then I pass a microphone, and every single person who was receiving those thoughts has a physiologic response that is not good. Headache, nausea, heart palpitations, weak knees, knots in their stomach, their throats close over, crying, shaking. So we reverse the experiment, and the second group gets one order to look this person in their eyes and think this thought: you are the most beautiful person I've ever met. I love you. And I set the timer for 3 minutes, but it never lasts longer than 1 minute, because by the end of 1 minute, they're hugging each other. And so I have the whole room chant. I had 250 midwives and OBs at the University of Buenos Aires last year. And this past April. And I said to them, what your mind thinks, her body feels. So everyone that walks into that room has to believe in the direction of normalcy. They have to trust the mother. They have to trust her body. They have to trust her own wisdom. They have to trust the baby, that this is not their process. They are there to accompany, support, and love this woman through this process. The more we can do that, the less fear that there will be walking into any facility, whether it's hospital, home, or birth center. my gosh, I've had couples that didn't even make it out of the house before they gave birth. Dayna.
One of them.
And we had one couple last year that practiced their hypnosis so much that she gave birth in the front seat of the car on the way to the birth center. They were 8 minutes away. And when she got to the birth center, I got a wheelchair, brought her into the birth center and said, the tub's ready. Would you like to deliver your placenta in the water or on?
Oh.
So I turned off all the lights. I, turned on the flickering candles and put the music on. And she birthed her placenta in the water and stayed there with the baby in the sanctuary.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. I still get goosebumps when I think about it.
Mhm.
It's
That's
about
wonderful.
creating a safe space.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Yeah, and it is. It's beautiful to have an accelerated birth and not have to wait, 10 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours. Those days don't have to be here anymore. We can help with that. And that's what we do in Blissborn, as you know, and as we're, educating everyone. So did you have an experience during your career where you observed a difficult birth, or something that you would have said is your most challenging that you've had so far?
Mhm. A couple of things. When you've done this as long as I have, it would be unusual if you didn't have a baby death.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one fall crisp morning, I got a call, and the mom said, I just am not feeling the baby moving. She was eminently due. She was like 40 weeks. And I went to her house and there were no heart tones.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the hospital. They did an ultrasound and the baby had passed in utero. And as difficult as that was, the hospital that we'd gone to helped her start her labor with just some gel on her cervix because she was already, it was first baby. And they said, go home and have your water birth. And we did. And she called her parents. There was, I set up the tub, filled it. So both sets of grandparents, her sister was there. And the sacred music was on, and she labored beautifully and let the baby out. It's a little more difficult when the baby's not participating, but still the uterus pushes down with pressure of 90 pounds, 44 kilos, so that that this can happen. The fetal ejection response from the mother can happen. It's just not happening from the baby's side. And the baby came out into the water, and the photographer took pictures, and you couldn't tell that the baby had passed. It just looked like any normal birth. And I'm getting goosebumps as I think about it too, because it was what could have been a very difficult situation for the mother and the whole family turned into praise and thanksgiving for God's guidance. It was, baby was buried the very next day. And she processed and eventually went on to have a normal birth also at home 2 years later.
Okay.
So everything, let's put it this way. Also, it's very difficult when babies are born with abnormalities. And I've seen that as well, with maybe a big like strawberry mark on their face, or feet that are on backwards, or a surprise breech that sometimes happens. But now that this is one reason I've taken classes on how to do that, because I've had several. And so whatever has happened during the labor and during the birth to either create trauma or overcome trauma, just know that anything that has been ruptured can be repaired. Like if a baby has to go into the NICU and be separated from the sanctuary, that as soon as that baby comes back, you can treat it like a newborn. My own grandson, who's 20, he'll be 26 in January. He was born at 31 and a half weeks. And it was an emergency full anesthesia cesarean. And I was the first one to hold that little tiny 1.6 kilo baby in my hands and give him a priestly blessing. May God watch over you. May his countenance shine upon you. May you always know what the peace of knowing God is. And the NICU staff let me do that before they took him. And when my daughter woke up in the recovery room, I stayed with her. The first thing she asked was, "Where's my breast pump?" It was the first thing. And and sometimes out of adversity comes God's plan. It's not always clear, but she became a lactation consultant counselor. She was one of the youngest volunteers for the Healthy Start program, making hospital visits to help mothers with preemies pump and get their breast milk built up. And she's been working for Women's, Infants, and Children's, the WIC department, for Clackamas County, Oregon, for the last 11 years.
Wow.
And before that, she was working for WIC in the other county in Oregon. I can't think of the name now. Multnomah County. Yeah. And so her adversity with having a severely premature baby helped her find her career.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen with women who've lost their babies at birth, have come back, and even become midwives and had other careers of helping. So I think it says in Torah and also in the Christian Bible, praise God in all things. In all things. And so that's what I take with me into that birth room, is still that belief in normalcy, but understanding that things happen and we can use them to accomplish what our destiny is.
Absolutely. I'm glad you bring that faith into the room, because you're holding the space for that. We have things that are unseen and things that are preventative that we can both help the mothers with as they go through these classes. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this recent story, but there was a young couple in their 20s, early 20s. I think they were both 20 years old, in Atlanta. They went in for a hospital birth, and the practitioner put too much pressure on the head. Not to freak anyone out, this is pretty deep and upsetting, but they ended up decapitating the baby because of the shoulders. The shoulders were pressing down. Shoulder dystrophia. Am I saying that right?
Dystocia.
Thank you. And yeah, and it's we still have so far to go, but we've also come so far. And that's the delicate balance that we have to present when as educators for not just blissborn hypnobirthing, but any hypnobirthing and childbirthing education, is that yeah, we've come this far, but we have a lot more to go, and we're here to help, and we're here to transform the mentality of birth into something that is manageable, calm, yet unexpected. Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
this is just like 1/3 of my library. There's lots of books here.
Mhm.
And one of the books that really informed me was written in the 70s. And there were two books, and it was The American Way of Birth.
Mhm.
And then there was another follow-up book, The American Way of Death.
Mm.
And the author's name escapes me. I'll think of it as soon as we're done. So, but she was a British author. And I first read The American Way of Death. I think she published that first. And, I worked med-surg cardio,
Mhm.
cardiac intensive care, neurosurgical intensive care before I went back to babies. I loved babies in the hospital. I had 100% on my nursing boards for maternal child health. I just, and that's pretty much what I wanted to do. But I couldn't stand what we did in the hospital. I couldn't. I was always getting in trouble because I would deliberately like knock the episiotomy scissors onto the floor. Oh, I'm so sorry, doctor. I'll go get you another pair. And by the time I came back, baby would be born
Yeah.
with
Mhm.
no episiotomy and no
No.
tear.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would take the little blue bulb and hide it in my pocket because babies don't need to be suctioned.
Right.
This was one of the reasons that I wrote my book, because there's a big chapter called Dispelling the Medical Myths.
Mhm.
And I mean, just for goodness sakes, allow a woman to choose whatever position she wants.
Yes.
Don't have the stirrups.
Mhm.
And everything that we know today, like the suctioning and throwing those fluids away, destroys the microbiome
Yeah.
that needs to get into the baby's stomach.
Mhm.
So each of us has taken a part that if it were the elephant in the room, this one says, oh, the elephant is like a snake. The elephant is like a tree trunk. The elephant is like a whip. The elephant is like a tropical plant with a leathery leaf, and everybody's blind. But if we take off the blindfolds and look at the whole, you've got tree trunk legs and a snake for a trunk, and the tail is wispy and feels like a whip, and the ears are like a tropical plant. And so we have to take off the blinders and look at what this new human being needs, what this mother needs. I've watched so many babies come out with no interventions whatsoever, upright positions, dropping into my hands with no pushing, breathing the baby out. And it's breathing the baby out in the water,
Yeah.
on the bed, on the floor, on the birthing stool. So this is why I've got two books that are in me, and I'm going to have to stop traveling for just a little bit. The first book that's going to come out, I'm going to time it so it comes out for my son's 40th birthday, but it's called The Essential Guide to Waterbirth.
Mhm.
Everything you need to know.
Mhm.
whether you're a parent or a practitioner.
Wow.
And I'm going to make it required reading for my certification course. And then the second book that I want to follow very closely, my first book was called Gentle Birth Choices. And now I want to follow it up with the wisdom of gentle birth. What has gentle birth told us? What's possible? What's humanly possible? And I start out with the Babylonian Talmud. I've been collecting things, and in the Babylonian Talmud, which was probably written down around 300 BCE, it's how to handle the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
Never cut the cord until the placenta is out of the woman's body. And in another room in my house are over 100 books that are antique medical and midwifery textbooks that I've collected and purchased and had and inherited from my good friend Carla Hartley. She put them in her will to come to me because she knew I wanted to write this book. And so you open up any page in 1849, never cut the cord until the placenta delivers. Otherwise, the infant will suffer a sickly childhood. Fast forward 150 years to 2006. They discover that there's so much iron that's contained in the placenta that it actually causes the brain to myelinate. Without that extra blood from the placenta, you have less intelligence, you have less ability to create the neural connections.
Absolutely.
So each of us has a piece, and I have this vision of having a platform where each of the experts in that field can put their links to their website and their IG account and their Facebook page, and Niels Bergman and Judith Mercer. Niels Bergman's kangaroo care, Judith Mercer is delayed cord clamping, and Waterbirth and Skin to Skin. Get all of them in one place where there is so much research today, so much research.
Wow.
And so the internet has helped us go much faster. Like you and I couldn't have had this conversation 5 years ago without an expensive camera, maybe a GoPro, but but here we are, informing parents and hopefully a few providers what's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And I've been able to help my cousin who recently gave birth 2 months ago in Bahamas, and another, my cousin's wife, who was also pregnant around 3 years ago, also in Bahamas, able to do this through Zoom and help them with their births. And they had amazing, wonderful, unmedicated births.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So my last question is about a different way of birthing, still using water though. So many say that the future of birth is water birthing, and I believe that wholeheartedly. As we move into the golden age and the new earth, it's been said that dolphin-assisted births, which is an ancient way to give birth from the Lemurian and Atlantis civilizations, could become popular again. Right now in the US, it's illegal to interact with wild dolphins. And I wonder why. The dolphins swim around the mother and relax her with sonar. And they also help make the birth less painful and quick. Then after the baby is born, they've observed these babies being able to talk and walk sooner than the average child. So what is your feeling about this? Have you heard about it? And what's your take?
What do you think? I'm the water birth guru,
Yeah.
okay? And I I specifically went to California from Ohio so that I could do holistic nursing, and I fell in love with the ocean.
Mm.
I've been swimming with dolphins many times in many different places around the world. Besides being in 75 countries, I've wherever there's an ocean, I'll swim in it as well. Even the South China Sea, the Sea of Japan, the Baltic, the North Sea. Um, if we're going to birth in the ocean, and I've helped a few couples do that, it has to be warmer waters. It doesn't have to be body temperature, but it should be a good like above 82, anywhere between 82 or warmer. And some of the tales that came out of Russia and some of the films that came out of Russia with dolphins helping were setups. Like they would film a woman giving birth, and it would look like there was a dolphin, but it was a dolphin in a separate tank behind the tank. And I have seen women injured and children injured by dolphins. They are playful, but they still are wild animals, and that's why we have to be very, very careful.
Mhm.
I myself have gone to the Bahamas and swam with dolphins there, and taken pregnant women there to swim with dolphins. And it's in an enclosure, but it's a very large enclosure, and you can touch the dolphins and things like that. The interaction with wild dolphins, I had a rib broken once by a sea lion that was being playful and rammed me on my side, and it was, whew, I thought that was it. I was done. And so I want there to be a really good respect. I do believe that I wrote in the second edition of Gentle Birth Choices, one of my dearest friends, um, Zinaida Bakareva, who is a pediatrician from Vladivostok, Russia, who's now living in Toronto, Canada. She would take groups of people called the Healthy Family Club to a remote island in the North Japan Sea, off the coast of Russia, and they would take the seawater and dump it into big kettles and warm it, because it was pretty cold. I mean, if it was above 50, that was strange. You're not going to birth in water like that.
Yeah.
But they would actually, dolphins would sometimes beach themselves to be near the newborn babies. So there is a communication. And when you come over to my house, you'll see part of that. There's a beautiful painting that was painted in Russia of me. In the background, there are two dolphins jumping up and looking through a window and seeing me as an incarnation in a previous life in Russia, wearing a babushka and nursing a baby. And this was a channeling that Igor Tchaikovsky had done, that I was bringing this information back, peoples of the earth, through the dolphins, and that it was sent through the dolphins to about 10 of us around the world, all on the same moon cycle. And we met each other. So I had that vision in it was probably around 1985. After I'd already given birth in water, I'd already been to France. I'd met Frederic Le Boyer. I went to the hospital where Michel Audin worked. And I came back and I had this vision that I had to start a nonprofit organization to legitimize it as a birthing practice. And my goal, the mission of Waterbirth International, is to make water birth an available option. And those are the operative words, an available option for all women in all birth settings. And I'm 72 years old now, and I've asked God to grant that wish, grant that mission by the time I'm 80. So we only have 8 years left. But there is a rabbi from the 3rd century that says, you receive your mission when you come here.
Mm-hmm.
And you're obligated, you are under obligation to carry it out. However, you're not obligated to finish it. And so I know that part of my legacy was creating this movement, creating the excitement about it. I remember midwives and doctors looking at me like, oh, water birth, that's so messy. I was on national television and they tried to make me look really stupid. But I've never given up. I've never lost the vision. Mm-hmm. And yes, there is a zenith. I like to talk about my work in Israel. Israel is about the size of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. The population is now 9 million people. There's 27 hospitals in Israel that offer maternity services. And we already have water birth in 11 of them. Wow. And this November, I'm going to be there for 2 more hospitals to train the staff. Mm-hmm. And I announced last December in a meeting of about 100 people that I wanted Israel to be the first country in the world where every single hospital offered water births, all 27. And I wanted it by the time I was 75. And one of the doctors raised her hand and she stood up and she goes, that is not going to be possible. We are going to do it by the time you're 73. So we're now working together. Yeah. She's retired from, and she was a maverick in her hospital in Laniado, in Netanya, Israel, and VBACs in the water. And while she was there in the 5 years that she was head of OB, they had almost 2,000 water births in that one hospital.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. So our estimates today, and it's a very low estimate, but 1.5 million babies have been born without consequence, without damage, in water.
Wow.
So it's happening for sure.
Wow. And just rolling back time, you were the 6th documented one in the US with your son that's now 40. It's amazing where we've been and where we're headed. It's beautiful.
I did find many cultures around the world who used water, even spring water, cold water, to labor in and give birth in, and indigenous first peoples all around the world. The continent of Africa, North Africa, West Africa, women gave birth in the oceans all the time.
Mhm.
I've met people from Ghana. I've met people from Nigeria. And it's like, yeah, we do this.
I love it. Wow. Well, before we go, I want to share your information with everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and let's go ahead and go to your website first. So this is Barbara's website, waterbirth.org.
Yeah.
And you have all of your information here, right? Your courses. I'll put a link in the description and make sure everyone has all the information. Just add water. Absolutely love that. And you're also on Facebook and Instagram under the handle Waterbirth Int, I-N-T. So at Waterbirth INT. Did I miss anything?
Also at the Barbara Harper. And I do post a lot of water birth videos. I
Okay.
think I put one up this morning as well.
Perfect. Okay, very nice. Yeah, and just to make sure everyone knows where to find me as well, from fertilitytodelivery.com. And I have all my information online and also on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm going to post this on YouTube, this video. I'm going to share this with Barbara as well. And let me go back to stop share. Sorry, it's go back to Zoom. Oops. No, stop share. There we go. That's better.
Okay.
Great. All right. So Barbara, thank you so much for being here. And we are recording this on September 13th, 2030. So we have the Jewish New Year coming up. So I wanted to wish you Lashana Tova, and thank you so much for sharing your exquisite knowledge with us. I hope that the folks that are watching, whether you are pregnant right now or you're planning to become pregnant, I hope we planted a seed, not just about water birth, but also the Blissborn Hypnobirthing. We're both practitioners. I know, Barbara, you have classes ongoing, and I have the ongoing classes. Most of mine are online right now, and we're both here to help and create that space for you so you can overcome all of your fears. And we just want to be here for you. Thank you, Barbara, so much for being here and for taking the
My
time to
pleasure,
do this.
Dayna. This was fun. We should do this every once in a while.
Absolutely. And we're 10 minutes away, so we could actually do it in person, which is even better.
Right. All right. And Lashana Tova to you and your family as well.
Thank you so much. Many blessings, everyone. Bye.
Bye.